Picture this. It's a crisp Wednesday evening, late summer. The city lights are painting an elegant backdrop against the cobalt blue sky. My name is Emma, and I am an independent businesswoman. My trade? Providing a service for the lonely, the needy, or simply those in search of some pleasurable company. You could call me a lady of the night, a companion, or a prostitute, the last being the word that seems to stick with people the most. For years, I've led a dual existence. To my darling husband Richard, I'm the loving and supportive wife. He's the head chef of a high-end restaurant downtown, and it's because of his unforgiving hours that I've been able to sustain my secret profession. As far as he's concerned, I spend my evenings volunteering at a shelter downtown, pouring soup and spreading warmth among the city's less fortunate. However, one fateful night, our mutual worlds collided in a way I never anticipated. Richard's best friend Ethan, a divorced financial analyst, had been feeling the creeping loneliness since his marriage fell apart. He stumbled upon my online advertisement, completely oblivious to the woman hidden behind the pseudonym Belle. Intrigued, he called. We set up an appointment, and as per my professional routine, I didn't ask for any personal details over the phone. When I opened the door to Ethan that night, the color drained from his face faster than I'd ever seen. Our shared shock was palpable, but after a stuttered explanation, he surprisingly agreed to keep my secret. After all, he was there for a service, and I was offering that service. If we could keep our relationship strictly professional, what harm could it do? We went ahead with the appointment. I did my best to be Belle, treating Ethan no differently than any of my other clients. It was awkward at first, but as the evening wore on, we fell into an unexpected rhythm. It felt almost natural. However, as word tends to in a small town, news of Ethan's escapades found their way back to Richard. The whispers of his friend's secret nights out became an echo in Richard's ears, and with each passing day, his suspicion grew. One evening as I returned home, the aroma of simmering pasta sauce and garlic bread wafted through the house. Richard was at the kitchen counter, a furrowed brow indicating that something was off. He turned around, a photograph in his hand, one of me, professionally taken for my ad, my face artfully obscured. "Is this you, Emma?" he asked. His voice trembled with a cocktail of emotions. Betrayal, anger, shock, hurt. Caught off guard, I took a deep breath and decided that honesty was the only way forward. I nodded, preparing myself for the barrage of questions, the accusations, and the likely harsh judgment. "Yes, Richard, that's me. I'm Belle." You slept with Ethan?" He was practically choking on his words, and his face looked cold and empty, the world he knew seemingly crashing down around him. I calmly replied, "Yes, I did. He was a client. He paid for my services just like any other client. He deserved them." A heavy silence filled the room as Richard grappled with the revelation. His face was an open book of shock, anger, and devastation. His ocean blue eyes, usually soft and loving, were darkened now, clouded by the storm of emotions roiling within him. His brow furrowed in a way I'd never seen before, creasing deeply as if every hurtful truth was etching a line on his forehead. His normally rosy cheeks were ashen, a stark contrast to the rage burning in his eyes. I, on the other hand, was genuinely perplexed by his reaction. My face likely mirrored my confusion, eyes wide in my attempt to understand his pain. My lips parted slightly as I searched for the right words. My brows knitted together, emphasizing the deepening lines of worry on my forehead. I could feel the flush creeping into my cheeks, the heat a stark contradiction to the icy fear spreading in my veins. "I thought you were volunteering at the shelter." Richard's voice was barely a whisper. His eyes were welled up, a piercing look of betrayal in his gaze. "Yes, Richard, I do volunteer at the shelter," I answered honestly, trying to ease his shock. "But that's only part of my evenings. I didn't want you to worry about our financial situation, the medical bills, the mortgage. This was a way I found to help us." Richard recoiled, the implications of my secret life hitting him in waves. "And Ethan?" he queried, his voice a mixture of anger and confusion. "Did you think about me when you were with him?" I was taken aback. I hadn't seen it from his perspective before. To me, it was purely a business transaction. But to him, it was personal, a violation of trust. "I didn't see it like that, Richard. To me, Ethan was a client who needed a service, and I was there to provide it. I didn't consider our personal connections. I was Belle, not Emma." Richard shook his head, despair etched across his face. "How can you not see that it's wrong, Emma? You slept with my best friend behind my back. You lied about your evenings, about your job. This isn't just about you providing a service, it's about trust. honesty, about our marriage. My husband's words brought me to an uncomfortable reality. I had been viewing my situation purely from a professional perspective, conveniently disconnecting my work from my personal life. But the lines had been blurred beyond recognition, and now I was forced to face the consequences. I didn't realize you'd see it that way, Richard," I mumbled, finally understanding the pain I'd inflicted on him. "I've always separated my work from our life together. But you're right, I should have considered your feelings, our relationship." Richard sighed, the sound heavy with heartbreak and disappointment. He dropped his head down for what felt like an eternity. He stared at the cold floor as he tried to hold himself together. "I need time, Emma, to process all this," he whispered. As he left the room, I sank to the floor, awash in the aftermath of the confession. The cold marble tiles beneath me felt eerily similar to the chilling realization I had just come to. I had been living in a world of lies, convinced that my actions were justified because they were part of a job. But the hurt I had caused my husband was real, his feelings valid, his confusion understandable. I felt an aching pain in my body as I realized I had no one to turn to. My father had passed away when I was young, and my mother and my siblings aren't very close. On top of that, if my actions truly were evil, why should I reveal them to friends and family? So here I am, confessing my story to the faceless masses, wondering, was I really wrong for doing this for my husband's best friend? After all, he was a client who paid for a service I was offering. Why should it matter who the client was? Why should it matter that it was Ethan? Richard always loved hanging out with Ethan, so if anything, I thought that would make it better. And yet, seeing the pain in Richard's eyes, hearing the hurt in his voice, I can't help but question myself, my decisions. I failed to recognize the personal implications of my actions, blinded by my professional rationalization. But another part of me still believes that what I did is absolutely justified. As I wait for Richard to process our new reality, I am left grappling with my own confusion, struggling to reconcile my dual roles as Emma and Belle, and questioning if I can ever truly separate the two. Update 1. It's been about 2 weeks since the whirlwind revelation to my husband Richard, and I find myself once again questioning whether I was wrong. But oh, how the tables have turned. Richard decided to go the selfish route, so I plan to do the same. After Richard left our home that night, he disappeared into the inky blackness of our small town. His whereabouts remained a mystery until I received an unexpected message the next morning. It was from my mother, her words shaking me to my core. It turned out, in his state of emotional turmoil, Richard had sought refuge at my mother's house. My mother was alone when he arrived. A familiar face, a welcoming shoulder, a safe haven. She invited him in, poured them both a strong drink, the alcohol serving as a dubious balm for Richard's open wounds. In his despair, Richard confided in my mother about my double life, about Ethan, about our shattered trust. To my shock, my mother, instead of condemning him for not understanding my choices, comforted him. But it didn't end there. A few glasses of whiskey later, lines blurred, boundaries crossed, and they slept together. As if I hadn't already felt the world crumbling beneath my feet, my mother added another twist to the tale. She had reasons to believe Richard might have slept with my two sisters as well. My initial reaction was one of pure, unadulterated fury. The audacity of my own husband, well, estranged husband now, sleeping with my mother and potentially my sisters was beyond comprehension. I was no saint, but this felt like a stab in the back. I tried to reach Richard, dialing his number more times than I could count, but my calls fell on deaf ears. My texts remained unanswered, my pleas for explanations lost in the vast void of our fractured relationship. Later that afternoon, the final blow landed. One of Richard's friends arrived at our doorstep, a grim expression on his face. He handed me a manila envelope. My hands shook as I opened it, revealing the harsh reality of our future: divorce papers. Was it because of Ethan? Or was it his revenge, a cruel game of tit-for-tat with my family as pawns? All I knew was, in his eyes, I was the one at fault. I was the villain. My world had spun out of control in a matter of days, and there I was, standing amidst the wreckage of my marriage, holding a symbol of our impending separation. As I navigate the tumultuous waves of anger, betrayal, and regret, one thing has become clear. I'm not going down without a fight. I have been branded as the wrongdoer, while Richard played victim, conveniently ignoring his indiscretions. I've hired a lawyer, determined to squeeze every penny I can out of him in court. If he believes he's the only one who's been wronged, he has another thing coming. As I stand on the precipice of this nasty battle, my resolve has only strengthened. I may have started this by blurring professional lines, but I'll be damned if I let him walk away without paying for his transgressions too. So here's my updated confession. Once again, I ask, was I really wrong? Or is it Richard who needs to face his wrongdoings? I guess only time will tell. Update 2. Hello everyone. The last time I updated, I was full of fiery determination, ready to take on the world, ready to make Richard pay for his wrongdoings. But the universe, it seems, had other plans. The divorce court proceedings were grueling, emotionally draining. Each day brought a new revelation, a new accusation, a fresh wound in an already gaping chasm. As the time went on, Richard eventually found a new girlfriend and began bringing her to court with him. But of course, the universe decided that I hadn't been unjustly punished enough. Richard showed up to one of the hearings with my mother. I was broken. I couldn't believe everyone was leaving my side for Richard's. I watched as she sat and made small talk with his new girlfriend. I began to feel sick. Each word my mother spoke to her felt like a knife in my chest. But the final blow was yet to come. Some court hearings later, Richard's attorney brought forth evidence that sealed my fate. Proof of my secret profession, my alter ego Belle, provided by none other than Ethan. Ethan, the man who had unknowingly started this whole fiasco, had turned coat. He presented the court with emails, phone records, and financial transactions. In his words, he didn't want to lose his best friend. So he sold me out. The client confidentiality I thought we had apparently meant nothing to him. Upon the revelation of the evidence, the courtroom erupted in a cacophony of gasps and murmurs. Richard sat across from me, a grim sense of victory on his face. His lawyer was practically glowing with self-righteous triumph. The judge ordered an immediate recess, the hammering gavel echoing my shattered hopes. Outside the courtroom, I confronted Ethan, but his regret seemed superficial at best. "I had to do it, Emma," he said, his voice lacking any true remorse. "Richard's my best friend, and I'm not going to let you get away with hurting him like that." As the reality of the situation sank in, my fury knew no bounds. Ethan's betrayal stung far more than Richard's actions. From Richard, I had expected it, but Ethan's backstabbing felt like a cold slap in the face. The verdict of the court was harsh. I was to serve a month in jail, pay hefty fines, and of course no alimony from Richard. He got off scot-free, using my secret life to shield his own indiscretions. The injustice of it all was like a bitter pill, hard to swallow, stuck in my throat. As I pen this from the cold confines of my temporary prison, my emotions are a whirlwind. Betrayal, anger, regret, they're all there, swirling around like a dark storm. I was wrong, yes, but weren't they too? Is it wrong to want them to pay for their actions? As I look towards a future marred by this scandal, my resolve is tested. The path forward is unclear, muddled by the ramifications of my past actions. But one thing is certain, I won't let this break me. I made mistakes, and I will pay for them. But they should remember, I am not the only one with skeletons in the closet. So here I am, dear world, wronged and betrayed, seeking solace in your faceless audience once again. The question remains, was I really the only one who was wrong? Or is the world too quick to judge a woman for her mistakes while turning a blind eye to a man's? The answers seem as distant as my freedom, but I hope to find them someday. Well, somebody's in the wrong, that's for sure. What do you think? Let us know in the comments section below. When you subscribe, be sure to click the notification bell. Click here for more Tangled threads.